very much agree with you and those other experts that more fiscal response is needed. The President and I want to move forward with more fiscal response. And let me just say, the expiration of enhanced unemployment insurance is something that we are concerned about. I am very proud of the last two bills in the Senate, passed 96-0 and 100-0. That is the definition of bipartisan support. I said in my opening testimony, I believe that Republicans and Democrats need to work together to have additional support. As you know, I've worked very closely on these before. I'm prepared to sit down with the Speaker at any time to negotiate. I think the issue is not what is the top line. I think the issue is we need now support quickly. That's what's important to the American economy. And if we need to do more, we can come back. So again, I want to emphasize the President and I do support additional fiscal response, and we've been working hard to try to get a negotiated agreement on a bipartisan basis.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think my time has expired, and so hopefully I think we have a second round, and I do have one or two more questions. With that, Mr. Jordan, I recognize Mr. Jordan for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, is it fair to say that if Democrat governors would let people go back to work in their states, we'd probably have less unemployment?
I believe there's no question that the reason we have unemployment is that certain states are not opening up and that there are issues. Obviously, some of that has to be balanced with the medical issues appropriately, but yes, we would expect unemployment to drop significantly between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's largely Democrat states. I mean, Democrats keep their states locked down, and then they complain about unemployment. Here's a novel idea. Let people go back to work, and I bet you'll get a lot less of it. You'll get stronger economic growth that will build on what we have seen in the last 3 months. How many jobs have been added to the economy in the last 3 months, Mr. Secretary?
An extraordinary amount. I think, as you commented earlier, close to 10 million new jobs.
10 million jobs in the last 3 months we're adding back. So this idea that there's not a V, and there is a V-shaped recovery, it's happening. It would happen a lot sooner if you didn't have Democrat governors keeping people from going back to work. Mr. Secretary, how many times have you testified in front of Congress?
More times than I can count.
Numerous times, right?
Yes.
I think you said 5 times earlier. And you're willing to come and talk about everything you've done and the administration has done, because what you have put in place, the programs you have recommended, the programs that the Congress approved, they've worked. How many loans again in the PPP program?
The PPP program, as you know, kind of has 5.2 million loans that have supported an extraordinary number of jobs for small business.
Yeah, I think the number is over 50 million jobs, 51 million jobs through the PPP program. 85% of small businesses receive support. And as you just said a few minutes ago, this had strong bipartisan support. This thing worked. You're not afraid to come and testify any and every time. I mean, not that you always want to be testifying in front of Congress. I understand that. But you're willing to come testify because the programs that were put in place that the White House and the Trump administration and you supported have actually made a huge difference for this economy and are paying off now. If we didn't have this PPP program, would we be adding the 9 million jobs that you just saw in the last 3 months?
No, there are over 50% of the private jobs are to small businesses. And let me comment, we have over $130 billion left in PPP, which I believe if Congress was willing to take up a standalone action to repurpose this money for additional funds, I believe this would pass with overwhelming support in the House and the Senate, and I would encourage the House to move forward with that.
Well, that's a great point, Mr. Secretary. Would you say that's the most important thing? If we were going to come together, forget all the other stuff the Democrats want to put in this bill, all the left-wing baloney they want to add, and we just focused on helping small business owners, helping families, focusing on the PPP program, is that the most important thing we should focus on if, in fact, there's going to be another piece of legislation?
I would say kids and jobs are the most important thing, and as it relates to jobs, the area that has overwhelming bipartisan support that I believe would be easiest to pass on a standalone basis would be the PPP.
Yeah, I would love if we just focus on that. And frankly, that's what you guys are trying to do. That's what you've been focused on in the negotiations with Speaker Pelosi. Unfortunately, she wants to add, and the Democrats want to add all kinds of other things. And frankly, they want to bail out the states. The same states, by the way, who are most clamoring for the bailout are the very states that won't let their folks go back to work, that are adding to that unemployment number that Mr. Clyburn, the chairman, talked about just a few minutes ago. I think we're well past the time where we should be focused on one thing only, and that is letting people go back to work, getting this amazing economy we had just a few months ago, getting it back on track, the great American comeback, making that happen. And if we're going to do any legislation, let's focus just on the PPP program, which we know was so effective, so helpful to so many Americans. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Before yielding to Ms. Waters, I would want to say I agree that jobs are important. I agree children are important, and I have a few grandchildren. They are important. But health of every worker and every child is most important. With that, I yield to Ms. Waters. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for holding this meeting. It's sad to see that we have a member on the opposite side of the aisle who come here this morning playing the blame game. First of all, let me say that for the CARES Act, we commend everybody. We commend the Democrats. We commend the Republicans. I worked closely with Mr. Mnuchin. Nydia Velasquez and I worked closely on the PPP program, the MDI and the CDFI. Everybody that worked to get that CARES Act passed should be commended. Now, having said that, we can't rest because we did a good job with the CARES Act. $600 supplemental employment is out. And so we have people with very meager benefits from the unemployment insurance who need their government to step up to help them. And then we are facing a housing crisis. The millions of folks who are needing rental assistance are facing eviction. We're in the middle of an epidemic with homelessness. The small landlords, they're business people too. The mom and pop landlords are struggling to pay their mortgage and other property maintenance costs, and their rental income has declined or stopped altogether. And I could go on and on about what's in the Heroes Bill. And so, instead of coming here bragging about what we've already done and trying to have everybody believe that the economy is so much better, that we really don't have to worry, that jobs are increasing to the extent that we